Hey, welcome to Cheaper Jeeper TV. I'm Dino, your host. Glad to see you here. In this week's episode, we're going to install the REDARC TowPro Elite trailer brake controller. So stick around. The question you may have is, why would I want to install a trailer brake controller? Well, the main reason, there are some jurisdictions where by law you have to have a trailer brake controller if your trailer is over a certain number of pounds. Now that may vary depending on which jurisdiction you're in, but if you're traveling, you don't want to worry about if your trailer that you're towing is above the maximum weight for which you would require a trailer brake controller. So if you're over 1,000 pounds, it's probably a good idea to install a trailer brake controller, not only for that, but for also safety reasons. Now, there are two different types of trailer brake controllers. There's the kind that has, for example, progressive braking, where the amount of braking that you put on your brake pedal will be applied to the trailer in the same proportion. But there's also some trailer brake controllers that give you some manual controls, and this comes in handy for controlling your trailer during perhaps a windy episode or when going off-road. And that's the trailer brake controller that I'm going to install on my Jeep, and the model I'm going to choose is the REDARC TowPro Elite. Now, before I get into discussing the steps involved with installing the trailer brake controller, I just want to point out a video that I released a few weeks ago where I discussed some possible options of where you may want to mount the dial. You may want to look at that and look at what the options are, because you may want to choose one that's different than where I'm going to install it in this video. So now, having said all that, let's start looking at the steps involved with installing this trailer brake controller. So here is the REDARC TowPro Elite electric trailer brake controller. So this is the most up-to-date model. It's version 3. It has some improvements with how the lighting works for the knob and the size of the knob unit, so it can fit into certain places better. So let's have a look. Be careful when you take it out because there's no plastic in the packaging here. So this is the main head unit right here, or the brains of the operation, and this gets mounted underneath the dash. This is the knob switch, and this is the knob itself, and then this knob is the only thing visible for the unit that's visible on the Jeep on the inside. This is a plastic nut that will be used to hold this to the dash. This is a little insert that I can use when I mount the switch. So this wire will run from the back of the switch into the main unit right here. Now this cable they also include with the package. If I wanted to, I could connect this to this main unit and then just splice into my 7-pin wire harness. But I've ordered the JL specific wire harness, which would just plug into the side of this unit and then into my 7-pin wiring harness that I have in my Jeep, because I have the trailer tow package. If your Jeep doesn't have that, you must also install the 7-pin wire harness. And then the manual, of course, which has all of the directions. So that's the unit right there, and when we have this all installed, all I'll have visible in the Jeep is the control dial. So this plugs into here, this plugs into here, this plugs into here, and this goes into the Jeep. For my installation, I'm going to use the adapter plate on which to mount the dial in the cubby hole beneath the window switches. To be able to mount the switch, we'll have to remove the upper and lower bezels in the center console. You can use a trim removal tool, but I found a firm tug using my fingers enabled me to remove the upper console no problem. There are only 2 plugs that need to be removed as demonstrated here. I'm using my thumb to point to a tab that needs to be depressed that helps you remove the plugs. With the 2 plugs removed, we can take this piece and set it up on the dash.
To remove the lower trim piece to get access to the cubbyhole where we wish to mount the switch, we have to remove one screw with a Phillips head screwdriver. And like the trim piece before, this trim piece can be removed by a firm tug. To get access to the back of the cubbyhole, we only have to remove a couple plugs. I'll walk you through it, but it's good to keep the steps in order so you can put the right plugs back in place. Of the two plugs in the top right corner, the left plug is gray and the right plug is black. Then you just swivel the trim piece around and pull out this gray plug by pressing on the tab. And you don't have to remove the 12-volt socket because we could just swivel this piece around to get access to the cubbyhole. And it's the back of the cubbyhole where we need to feed the wire for the switch. I had my friend Doug help me drill a hole in the back of the cubbyhole there so that the cable for the switch could be fed in from the back. We used a pilot hole to make sure we got a good center spot on the right hand side at the back of the hole, and then we followed it with a 1/2 inch drill bit. A 5/8 inch drill bit would work best to help the plug fit through the hole, and if you only have a 1/2 inch drill bit, you could do what we did and use a file to help the plug fit through. The white plug piece goes through the back of the hole, and then it comes out through the front of the cubbyhole, to which we would connect the switch. The black plastic switch adapter plate then sits on top of the switch and is held in place by the clear plastic nut that came with the unit. It's plastic because it allows light to shine on the dial. Before putting on the dial, make sure that you turn the switch all the way to the left position. Then fit on the dial with the 0 set to the top. At this point, you could just test that the switch works by pressing it to see that it clicks, and then you could mount it into the cubbyhole. And in this application, it just friction fits into place.
Snap it in. There it is.
So how does that work? Just okay.
Yeah, because there's like a rubber piece right here.
Yeah.
We'll now take the switch cable, feed it through the center part of the open dash, and put it towards the driver's side. You'll need to remove the panel beneath the steering wheel by using a panel removal tool or simply tugging at it firmly with your hands. And then pull the switch cable into this area. But now we'll have to put our trim pieces back into place.
Okay.
We first have to reinstall the plugs that we removed in the reverse order in which we removed them.
The gray one's on the left, the black one's on the right. This one's in here for the outlet, no problem. The auxiliary plug is in, no problem.
And once you're sure that all the plugs for the lower trim piece are in place, you could just snap it back in.
So we'll just go like that. Okay, so this stays up here,
Oh, I see, because it plugs into the other.
and then there, all in. Now there's supposed to be a screw here. That light on there. Oh, this is good. And then when I pull that cord in there, it'll pull this in. Now where's the other piece of the stereo? Right up here. And basically, there's this plug here, which goes into the bottom there. And this plug here, which goes into here. Excellent. All this.
It's amazing how they.
With all the trim pieces back in place, we could pull tight on the switch cable so that the switch could mount firmly into the cubbyhole. Well, so far I'm very pleased with how this install is going. I'm really pleased with the location of the dial and how accessible it is and how firmly placed it is in the cubbyhole. Now it's time to run the cable to the trailer brake controller on the underside of the dash on the driver's side. So now it's time to show how the cable from the switch will be fed under the dash and secured underneath here, mounted to the trailer brake controller. But the trailer brake controller has to be plugged into the 7-pin wiring harness, which is up the dash on the left side above the brake pedal. It's hard to have a look at, but I'll do my best to show you where it is. It takes a bit of effort to get under the dash and look up on the left side, but you'll just see it past the wires, and it's a gray plug as you see in this image. I'm going to leave it in place there and run the cable from the trailer brake controller to that location.
So there we go. This is gonna go up. You might want to push just a little bit of your ball at a time.
And then this goes into the unit. Now we gotta get the unit.
The light on that flashlight's still on down there.
There are a few places under the dash to which to mount the trailer brake controller. I chose to mount it on this back metal piece here using zip ties. Let's see how it turns out.
Right there.
Because of the tight quarters, it might be wise to plug in this switch cable and the 7-pin wiring harness cable to the trailer brake controller before you mount the controller to the piece of metal under the dash. And when you're done, it'll look something like this. You could have a look at how I used the excess cable from the switch to run up this metal piece and zipped it in place with the zip tie, and the excess cable from the 7-pin wiring harness up this side. It looks like a nice clean install to me. So with the panel piece below the steering wheel reinstalled, it looks like a clean install in that you don't see any evidence of the trailer brake controller except for the dial in the cubbyhole. And with the Jeep turned on and depressing the trailer brake controller button, it lights up blue to indicate it's got power. We'll have to do a calibration video, but for now, let's move on to our tip segment. Now for some cheaper Jeeper tips.
In this week's subscriber tip, I want to discuss with you about the location of your trailer brake controller dial. I made this video here, which gives you some suggestions, but I did see some videos where they suggested placing the trailer brake controller dial somewhere low here under the dash, or even where the steering wheel was in its line of sight. Now, if you're getting a trailer brake controller that has manual control, that's because you want to be able to access it should a gust of wind cause your trailer to start swaying, or if you're off-road and you want to tow your trailer back in line as you're going down a hill. So being cognizant of that and making sure that you choose to put your trailer brake controller dial in a spot where you can easily access it is a good idea. So I hope you found that helpful. Now let's move on to our subscriber tip segment.
And now for subscribers tips. This week's subscriber tip comes from our Easy Flares Fender Flares extension installation video. Hey cheaper Jeeper TV, just another option. The new Rubicon or Willys with Extreme Recon 35-inch tire package come with fender flare extensions right from the factory. The price is about $20 Canadian per wheel. Signed, Jeff. Hey Jeff, thank you so much for the tip. I'm wondering if they're hard-sided or if they're soft like the Easy Flares, if they're installed using 3M tape or using the rivet holes. This is certainly something I'm going to check into. Thank you so much for the tip. And if any of you have any tips that you'd like to share, please feel free to put them in the comments section below, as they may make it in a future video. Thank you very much.
Hey, that's it for this week's episode of Cheaper Jeeper TV. I hope that you found it interesting, and if you enjoyed the video, how about giving it a thumbs up? And if you're new to the channel, please feel free to click on that subscribe button right here and the alert bell so you'll be notified when the next video is released. Until next week, I'm Dino for Cheaper Jeeper TV. Be well, stay safe, take care.